Hi, I'm Dr. Carl E. Dukes. I'm a nephrologist in San Antonio with South Texas Renal Care Group, and I'm proud to be able to give you some insights on Black History Month. The observation of Black History Month dates back to 1915 when Curtis G. Woodson, now known as the father of Black history, created an organization called the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. It started as Negro History Week in 1926. But President Ford made it a full month in 1976. February is the month not because it's short, but it was because Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass were both born in that month. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia in the early 60s. It was de jure segregation. You were basically invisible. I was educated in a segregated school system. Student enrollment was twice the capacity of my high school. As a result, I only went to school a half a day. The upper classes, 10th through the 12th grade, went to school from 8 to 12:30. The 8th and 9th graders, there were no middle schools for quote-unquote Negro students. They went to school from 1:30 to 5:30. I never had a new book. Everything was secondhand once the white schools got the newer editions. Fortunately, all of my teachers were HBCU graduates, and most of the academic enrichment was developed after school through various school clubs like chemistry, math, etc. I decided to go into medicine because I had a desire to help people, and I admired the physician role models in my community. Not only did they help people medically, but they were politically active and helped me formulate a lot of my philosophies. My biggest role model was my own physician, Dr. Clinton Warner, who was a board-certified surgeon who integrated the Crawford Long Hospital system. Unfortunately, subspecialty training is limited to African American physicians, so they were relegated to general practices. It was not uncommon for these doctors to have a small infirmary in the office or even in their home to treat quote-unquote Negro patients because hospitalizations were denied. If you needed subspecialty training, it was also limited because many white physicians would not operate on black patients. In fact, my grandmother broke her hip and had to heal by secondary intention because no one would operate on her because of her race. Most of my struggles in my pursuit of medicine revolved around covert and overt racism. Unfortunately, there are a lot of implicit biases that are generated because of systemic racism. I was never considered to be bright in the eyes of my colleagues or in many of my professors' eyes. I always had to be better to get through those tough times. It was not pleasant. I was never physically threatened or mistreated, but I do not have pleasant memories of those times. That is an interesting question. I was always interested in physiology. I remember that my physiology professor stood at the lectern and said that, quote unquote, you guys will never understand renal physiology, but I've got to try to teach it to you because the federal government says I have to. He was alluding to affirmative action. However, all of us had come from very reputable universities that had good track records with my medical school. I interpreted this as a challenge. I continued to excel, and over my career, I would send him notes to let him know that I had finished my residency, my fellowship, and was working with a world-renowned nephrologist. Things have changed in terms of the ability to do subspecialty training, and we're no longer being denied hospital privileges. For example, Dr. Clinton Warner had to sue the hospital system to get admitting privilege to operate, although he was one of the few board-certified surgeons in Georgia at that time. He was more than qualified than the quote-unquote good old boys who were denying him privileges. I would not have been able to be a nephrologist had I been born maybe a decade earlier. Unbelievably, my medical school up to the late 1960s would send the few black students to Freedman's Hospital at Howard University in Washington, D.C. to do their OBGYN rotations. The biggest thing is to acknowledge the implicit biases. Many people do racist things because of systemic racism, not necessarily because they're inherently racist. Repeatedly, African Americans are given suboptimal anesthesia because it is felt that we are resistant to pain. This was illustrated by Dr. Sims's seminal work on rectovaginal fistula repair. He did this on slave women without the benefit of anesthesia. We should also be cognizant of the general mistrust of the black community because of previous transgressions. I would like physicians in training to be aware of societal issues have a major impact on manifestations of disease. It is well documented that childhood trauma, either psychological or physical, results in worsening expression of those processes affecting target organ damage, particularly in terms of diabetes and hypertension. Hence, wellness is not simply an issue of diagnosis, medications, and diet. It is an issue of addressing social injustice. The social blight must be addressed to have safe and healthy neighborhoods. Black History Month means a lot to me because it's allowing us to learn more about our history outside of arts and entertainment. One of the major contributors to bias against black people is based upon the fact that there is ignorance of our contributions to society. There have been a lot of academic contributions as well. The contribution of African slaves introducing vaccinations, although Edward Jenner got the credit for it. We also have modern times, Charles Drew, blood transfusions. Interestingly, during World War II, the blood banks were segregated. Vivian Thomas, seminal work with Alfred Blalock in tetralogy of Fallot repair, was just recently acknowledged. My advice to youth is to study hard and quote-unquote keep your eye on the prize and have a thicker skin. Remember, your goal is to get a degree. Many people do not want to share the power with you. Remember, once you get your degree and you get out, you can make a meaningful impact on your community. And you can even redirect some of the thought processes of society in general. Thank you very much.